and welcome back to another exciting tutorial with me, Romi Fauzi. In this chapter, I'm going to show you how to create a rope swing system, a rope system, and this rope, the character can hang to it and swing on it. So I'm going to show you how it will become after we finish this tutorial. So this is how it's going to look. And you can jump, grab the rope, and there you can swing the rope by pressing forward and backward, and you can jump back to the ground. So okay, we are going to continue our project. Last time we saved our project in this scene, so I'm going to load the scene, and here we don't have any rope yet, so we will have to create the rope first. So to create the rope, I'm going to go to 3D mode for the view editor viewport, and then I'm going to create a new empty. I'm going to name this empty to rope, and I'm going to change the icon to the maybe a orange icon. Okay, so now I'm going to move the rope, maybe put it around here for testing, and then I'm going to move the z-axis to 0 so it aligns with the center of our ground, and maybe put the y-axis to around 8 values. Okay, so next step, we are going to create a chain of the object, or the chain object. In order to do that, you can use any object if you want to, but I prefer to use cube because it has the less polygon, so compared to capsule and swords. I'm going to change the scale to for the y-axis to 0.05, and the z-axis also to 0.05, and then I'm going to change the y scale to 0.8. Here I'm going to change the name to cube 1, or maybe chain 1. It will be better, just so to be clear. And then I'm going to add a hinge join component, and then I'm going to parent this chain 1 object from our hierarchy to the rope empty object, so it becomes the child of the rope object. And then I'm going to reset the value of the transformation to 0 and 0 and 0 for 3 axes, so it goes in the middle of this rope object. And because we have the height of the object, or the y scale of the object, 0.8, I'm going to shift the y-axis to minus 0.4, so it aligns, the top of the cube aligns with our parent object. And then I'm going to set a couple properties here. First, I'm going to set the box collider to its trigger, and then for the rigid body, I'm going to change interpolate to extrapolate, and I'm going also to freeze position the z position, so it cannot move to the sides of the z-axis, so it will be locked only to the y and x-axis. Okay, and then for the hinge join component, I'm going to change the axis for the x-axis to 0 and the y-axis leave it at 0, and for the z-axis I'm going to set that to 1. So as we can see here, we have a sort of a vector here, a line. As you can see, an orange line here. This shows which axis that the hinge will rotate, on which axis. If we change this back to the default setting, it will swing on the x-axis, but we want to swing on the z-axis, so it can swing on the swing to the our view direction. So I'm going to change this back z to 1, and then I'm going to leave auto configure connected on, but I'm going to duplicate this object and change the second one to chain 2 for the name, and then I'm going to shift add this value. I'm going to add a minus 0.8. okay, that doesn't work, so I'm just going to set to minus 1.2, so it lines nicely with the bottom of the first chain. And then for the second chain, I'm going to disable auto configure connected, and then I'm going to set the connected anchor to 0 for the x-axis, and for the y-axis I'm going to change this to minus 0.4, I think, if it's, or maybe, sorry, minus 0.5. okay, so, and then duplicate this couple of times. For the third one, we're going to need to change the name so we are not confused with the naming. And the last one, I'm going to change this to 4. And for the third one, we are going to shift the position value by subtracting to with 0.8 value, so we got minus 2. And for the fourth one, we are going to set this to minus 2.8. okay, there you go. Now we are going to need to connect each of the chain to each other. So the second chain change, we are not going to connect that to any rigid body, so it will stay on the top here. And for the second one, I'm going to change to add the connected body with the first chain. So this chain are connected to this chain here, as you can see. And as you can see, the connected anchor vector is aligned, because if we move this, we have another different representation for the connected anchor. So I'm going to change this to minus 0.5, so it aligns with our axis. And then for the third one, I'm going to drag the second one as the connected body. And for the fourth one, I'm going to connect the third one to the connected body. So by dragging, but you have to drag it directly to this rollout. And then for all of the change, I'm going to select them all, and we can change a couple properties here. I'm going to add a use limit, and I'm going to set the minus value to minus 20 degrees, and for the maximum values to positive 20 degrees. So that will be all, and I've already created a tag for it called rope. You can just add yourself the tag, add tag, and type rope, and then I'm going to give all of them tag as a rope. Okay, I'm going to save the scene first, and then let's see if it's working. Okay, I've already run this scene, but I want to see if the rope is working. So I'm going to select the last chain and move it around, and then release it, and we will see that the rope is behaving nicely. I know the segment is very low here. We only have a 4 objects chained to each others, but if you want to have a smoother lines, you will need more chain, and maybe a shorter chain on the y-axis. So the next steps, we are going to set the character to be able to jump and then grab this rope. So now let's continue to create the system for the character. Here I'm going to set first the animation, We haven't defined the animation yet, so I'm going to create a new clip here. And actually we already have that animation, so I'm going to show you how to add that. Rope hanging, because I'm going to add a space over there, and then the start frame, it's for the first frame set that value to 200, and for the end maybe 205. So we are going to set a very short animation, but I'm going to loop the time and the pose here, and then click apply. So we create a new animation, and as you can see, the character stays grabbing the rope. So okay, I think we can continue here, and then by choosing this Boxman Mecanim, open the animator window here. We are going to add a new state here. Okay, set this is our character. For mine is Boxman 2, and then I'm going to open this, and then I'm going to drag the rope hanging animation to the state. So we create a new state here. We have to create a transition for the rope hanging from any state, so I'm going to make new transition from any state to rope hanging, and then from rope hanging back to fall. For the fall transition, we are going to change the condition to fall. So if fall is triggered, it will go to fall. And then we need to create a new boolean values or boolean parameter here, and I'm going to name this on rope. And in order to go from any state to rope hanging, I'm going to change the transition condition to on rope to true. So, and then the next step, we are going to create a new state for the animation first. So the Mecanim animation, I'm going to add a new state here, and I'm going to name this on rope. So I'm going to create a new state anim on rope, and I've already used this, so it's already being treated as a global event. But if yours are not global yet, just check this button. So for the state, I just going to set a boolean to true, and then I'm going to specify a game object just like we did before to this variable. And then for the parameter, we need to set the on rope parameter to value to true, and then add a global transition for to anim on rope. So we already create that, and I'm going to copy this action and then put this to file. So open file, I'm going to set the on rope back to false. Okay, so now let's continue on doing a FSM for the rope event. So I'm going to create a new FSM to the character, and then for this FSM I'm going to change its name to rope event. Okay, and then I'm going to need to create a couple of variables. So first I'm going to create a rope object and set this variable type to game object, and then we are going to need create new variable called hinge component, and then I'm going to choose an object here. But for the hinge component, I'm going to change the type to a hinge here. So let's just search here, hinge join, and then I'm going to create another object called rope rigid body, and then I'm going to change the object type to a rigid body. So what are we doing here? We are going to create a hinge at runtime using FSM. So upon the characters collide with the last chain of the rope, it will activate that component or add that component to our character, so he hangs to it. So for the rope rigid body, I'm going to change it to rigid body object. So around here, around air, okay, this is rigid body. And then I'm going to create a new float for the rope Z rotation, or maybe I'm going to set this rope rot.z and then set that to float. And then I'm going to create another float called direction value, their value. So I think that will be all, but if we need something, I'm going to add as we do it. So for the first state, I'm going to change the name to wait on hitting rope and create a new event called on rope. Okay, I don't think we need to set this global, but I'm going to let this be. And I'm going to add that transition on rope here, and I'm going to create a new state in dealing to move towards the rope. So I'm going to move towards to the rope. I'm going to connect this, and for this state I'm going to add another on rope or end finish. So we have two transition here, and I'm going to create another state for creating the hinge object. So create hinge joint, and this is for swinging. So let's just add finish here, and we are going to handle this later. So first, for wait on hitting rope, I'm going to add a trigger event. So when the player triggered with another object with the tag rope, it will send the event to on rope, and then it will store the collider to that game object variable that we have created. So here, make sure that the rope, all of the object is tagged with the rope tag. For the character, for the first state, this will be all, and then for the second one, I'm going to need to add a move towards action, and then set the target object to rope object, and the max speed to the max speed to 5, and the finish distance maybe to 0.4. And for the finish event, go to on rope. And if this not working correctly, I'm going to add a wait just to make sure. If this does not happening, it would not stuck in this state. So I'm going to add wait, maybe around half second, and then if that happens, go back to finish. And for finish, we are going to go back to this first state. And for the on rope, we are going to continue to create hinge joint. So for creating hinge joint, we are going to use a couple action that we maybe haven't used before. So for get component, I'm going to get the rigid body component from our last chain here. Why? Because in order to use hinge, we have to connect that hinge to a rigid body, not to a game object. So we have to get that component first. So I'm going to specify the game object, and for the game object I'm going to get that rope object, which is chain 4. If you see here, we are going to store the collider to that specific chain, right? And then for the we are going to store the component to a rope rigid body, because we already set the rope rigid body game object to a object type of Unity engine.rigid body, so it will store the rigid body component from our game object here. And then I'm going to set this only one time, not every frame. And then for the next component, we are going to create a hinge. So create component, and then add component here. Use owner and component type. I'm going to set this to hinge join, and store the component to this variable. I'm not gonna check remove on exit. And then we are going to set the property. So for the we are going to need a couple set of property here. We are going to change this to hinge join. As you can see, the object already know the type of the Unity engine, because we already set this in our variable here. So we can add the property that we needed. So the first one, we are going to need to use the connected body rigid body here, and here we are going to use the rope body that we have already defined here by getting the component first. So this is for getting the component rigid body, and then this is for adding our hinge component hinge join to our character, and this is for set that okay, the character should connected to our rigid body on this object. Okay, and then I'm going to copy this action and then paste it. And for this one, I'm going to set the auto configure connected anchor, but I'm going to uncheck it instead of check it, so it will not use auto configure connected anchors. And then I'm going to copy this set property one time, and then I'm going to set the connected anchor factor 3 to 0 0 0 here, 0 0 0. And then I'm going to copy this again, and I'm going to set the anchor to a value of 0 0.25 and 0.1. I've already wrote this down so it fits the character. And what this means is the anchor of the character when connected to the rope is it will be around in front of his chest. If you want to see it, I'm going to show you that on rope hanging, if we slide, the position will be around here. So around here, this value that I've input on our character, this value is for the x-axis 0 and the y is 0.25 and the z 0.1 is around here. So the forward or the z-axis, because this is not a world value or world transform, this is a local transform, so the z is the forward direction as always, and 0.1 is mean the forward is around here, and the y-axis is the upward axis, so it doesn't on this area but in this area, and the x we leave it as 0, so it will be in the middle of the character. So this is the anchor, And the last one, we are going to set the axis. Axis, make sure is 0, 0, 0, so the character cannot swing by itself. Okay, I think this will be all for create hinge. If you want to, you can rename this, maybe like this: edit name, set connected body, but I'm not gonna do that here, but you should be doing that. Okay, so we are done with the hinge. I'm going to finish it, and then for the swinging, upon finish, I'm going to set the swinging. Okay, for swinging, first we are going to disable some FSM. So here I'm going to add enable FSM, use owner, choose movement, and then I'm going to uncheck enable. So I'm going to disable the movement in FSM. Disable movement FSM. And here I'm going to send an event to our game object FSM, and here I'm going to choose Mecanim animation, and I'm going to send the anim on rope global event. So, and the next step are we going to get a rotation. So we are going to get our rotation, our rope rotation, yeah. So here I'm going to specify game object, and then I'm going to choose the rope object. For the z-axis, I'm going to save it or to store it to our variables that we have created before, rope.c, and then I'm going to leave the space to world and check every frame, and then I'm going to set our character rotation to that value. So here we are going to feed it to our X angle and set the space to self. Every frame I'm going to check this every frame, and then I'm going to add our add force, and this force I'm going to move our rope object, and we are going to add to value to our X axis, but we are going to use the horizontal axis, and we are going to leave the force mode to force, and I'm going to check every frame. So here, let's see if it's working. And there, as you can see, we can see our rope. Can we hang to them? There you see, we can hang to it, but we cannot get off. So there is a problem, and we need to do just that. So in order for us to do that on the rope event for swinging, I'm going to add a get button action, and I'm going to change the button name to jump. So we are going to use spacebar, and for jumping I'm going to create an event called exit jumping, and I'm going to send that event, but I'm also going to add the transition to swing. So we already set that, and then we are going to deal on jumping event. So for this state, I'm going to set this name to jumping, and then I'm going to connect this. And for jumping, we are going to destroy component first. So we are going to destroy that hinge join that we have created here, and I'm going to specify game object. Sorry, I'm going to use owner, but I'm going to specify using our created object. Sorry, we are not going to use this, but we are going to pick from this type, and this will automatically destroy our hinge join object. And then for jumping, I'm going to add an add force to our character here, and I'm going to put a value 250 for the y-axis, and I'm not gonna set it every frame. And here I'm going to re-enable our movement FSM by checking this, and then I'm going to edit the name to enable movement FSM, and then I'm going to add a finish transition, and upon finish, let's go back to waiting on hit the rope. Okay, so let's see if it's already working, the jumping. There you go, we can hang to the rope, but can we jump? Oh no, we cannot jump, because I know the problem is because upon jumping and after finish, because after all of these actions executed, it will go straight to finish, and then it will trigger this again, because we are not leaving the rope yet, so we are still very close with our rope object. So in order to fix that, I'm going to add a wait action inside our jumping, and then let's set time to 1 second, and upon finish event choose finish transition. So let's see if it's already working. There you can see it's working, but we are stuck with our animation here. So no worries, we can fix that pretty easy. In order to fix that, on jumping event, we are going to send another event. Send event, maybe here, or yeah, it's okay. And then change the game object to event target to game object FSM, game object use owner, and then for the Mecanim animation, we are going to send to file event. So because the way we set up with our Mecanim, the transition for on rope to file is by file trigger. So let's see if we able to go back to the other animation. There you go. There you can see it's playing nicely, and we can jump back to our rope. And this is quite nice because it's pretty modular. So if you want to move the rope, you can move it around, maybe put it around here, and if you want to duplicate it, you can just duplicate it. It will work right away. So let's duplicate it to here, maybe, perhaps, and that one, move it around here. So let's try it. if it's working with both of this rope. So first, let's go to the first rope, and then we jump to it there. We can hang to the second one, and let's try if it's working with our next rope. So we already leave the first rope, and this is the second rope. There you go. We still have one problem here. As you can see, the rotation is wrong here. Somehow the direction is inverted. If we go to the right, it's rotated to the left, the character. But in this example, this is correct already, as you can see. Because why? Because the character is rotated around, so the axis treat them differently on the other direction. So we need to check our character direction. Here on the rope event, I'm going to create another state here. After create a hinge join, and then this is for check direction. And then create two more state. For the first one, we are going to set this, name this facing left, and this is for facing right. So I'm going to rearrange this. So after create hinge, we are going to this check direction, and for check direction, I'm going to get the character velocity. So get velocity here, and then I'm going to create another velocity, a float value, her val x, stands for character velocity x, and then I'm going to get the x value and set this every frame. Sorry, not every frame. And here I'm going to create a float, add a float compare action, and we are going to test that value to a 0. So if it's less, then we are going to create new events, face left and face right, or maybe face without D here. Okay. don't know why it's doing this, but I'm going to leave it, and yeah, it's done. So here I'm going to use the face left if it's less than 0, because left means it's always negative or minus the value. So less, if it's minus, then it's facing left, the velocity, and if it's positive, then it's facing right. And here I'm going to create two new transition here, and for facing right, I'm going to connect this to face right, and for facing left, I'm going to connect this to facing left, and both I'm going to add a finish state. And since the left, if the character is facing left and we jump to a rope, it rotates correctly. So for the facing left, I'm going to add a set float value, and we are going to use that their value variables that we have created, and we are going to feed this with a value of 1. And I'm going to copy this action, and if it's facing right, then I'm going to set that value. Sorry, I'm going to copy it again, and for facing right, I'm going to set this value the inverse value, so it's -1. And we are going to use this value to manipulate our access value. So I'm going to use a float operator here, and then I'm going to choose the first one is the rope ROTC, and the second one is the direction value, and set this every frame. And then I'm going to set the operation to multiply and store the result back to rope rot Z, rotation Z. So after we do this, let's see if it's already the rotation is already working nicely, even though I'm going to make sure the facing left rotation is correct. Okay, here we can see it's correct, and let's try it. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's try it on our second rope. There, it's rotating nicely, as you can see. Yeah, there you can see it's rotating correctly. It's following the rope. So this is how you make a rope system, and once that the character can grab and swing onto it. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and hopefully this is useful. And in the next session I'm probably going to create a ladder system. Okay, if you like this tutorial, please subscribe. See you soon.